Talk Money.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Money. I'm your host, SWPs. Women and money. It's an important issue. Sometimes it's a tricky issue. But we are here today to explain why this is more conversation about liberation. The freedom to pursue your dream, the freedom of having financial security, and the courage to be able to face all sorts of life situations. Yes, ladies, we need to talk money. Today on the show, we have an all-star women panel. Our good former colleague and my good friend Sumaira Abdi makes her return to the CNBC TV18 studios from SBI Mutual Fund. Welcome back. It's great to have you in the studios.
It's wonderful to be here.
Absolutely phenomenal. Lots to catch up with Sumaira, who's actually been a veteran. I mean, well before the others, it was Sumaira always talking about personal finance conversations, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Preeti Rathi, who's absolutely no stranger when it comes to women, wealth management and financial management, who of course runs Lakshmi as well. Preeti, thank you for coming back to the studios. Important subject at hand, as always. And we also have with us Neha Pathak, who handles estate planning at Motilal Oswal Private Wealth. A lawyer can be your best friend if things go haywire, and even otherwise, when you need to properly plan and, understand what your rights and obligations are as a woman. So thank you very much, ladies, for joining in today.
Pleasure.
See, women talk a lot, but we have about 21 minutes, and we need to give a quick-fire recipe to all the ladies who are listening in order to know what they need to do, what are the questions they need to ask to get their financial lives in order. So I want to start, ladies, by getting some anecdotes from you in your professional spheres on the ground. Let's start by understanding how far we have come. Are women showing greater awareness? Are they showing greater interest, at least, in matters of money and their own finance? Sumaira?
Okay, so let me start with what we are seeing at SBI Mutual Fund itself, right? We took out some data of the last 4 years. And you will not believe it. So now our total assets under management are at 11 lakh crores. Women account for about a little over 1 lakh crore of those assets.
Okay.
So just about 4 years ago, women were accounting for about 13%, of our investor base. Now that number is 20% plus.
That's fabulous.
And in terms of the live SIPs, that number is at 20%. So 20% of all SIPs at SBI Mutual Fund are by women investors.
Woohoo.
So I'm going to take that as a corollary to say that, yes, there has been a phenomenal growth. And, with women, with the, salaries increasing, with the education levels increasing, with more awareness coming in because of, digital assets around us, I would say definitely there is a march, but there is a long way to go.
Long way to cover. But that's a great stat, a good starting point, that at SBI Mutual Fund, this gigantic fund house in the country, the biggest, 20% of SIPs are actually coming in from women. So that's a good positive start for us on this conversation. Preeti, you tell us, you interact with investors so closely, a lot of women. What are you seeing on ground?
So I think I'll just take on from what Sumaira just said. I think it is true. We've seen from 2017-18 to now 2024, I think the participation of the AUMs that are held by women in mutual funds have gone from 15% to 22% now, right? But the more important thing here to take note of, because when you're looking at AUM, under a woman's name doesn't necessarily mean that that's the woman doing it herself.
Yeah.
I think the important stats that are hidden there is, in 2015-16, there were about 33% women amongst the entire invested corpus by women who were taking their own decisions. Today, that percentage is 44%. A 10% shift where women are actually taking decisions on their own. And I think that's the more important sort of piece to pay attention to, because women are increasingly getting more agency about everything that they do. And it is percolating down to money decisions as well. Today, I think 33% of the world's wealth is in the hands of women.
Really? That's a big stat.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think India's no different. Like, if you look at the global scenario, if you look at India as well, by the time we're 2030, and we're aiming to be a 10 trillion economy, a $2 trillion of that contribution will come from women. And it'll come from women who are either, into the workforce, because we've seen that increase very rapidly as well. From a dismal 20% to now we are 37% women in workforce. Yeah. It is women taking up entrepreneurship. And I think most importantly, women who are participating in inheritance, because that is changing as well. So women's wealth will actually grow at 7% annually, which is actually faster growth than your GDP growth, right? And women getting agency. This is definitely what we see in our interactions. Our women are now keen to take those decisions, to understand, to say, okay, how can I do this? I think the need, what we've realized is for platforms to really reach out to them and understand their behavior. Once you make it relatable, we've actually seen women taking it up. Much to, we are always told women are risk averse. I say this all the time. Women, once they learn, once they are informed, they're very risk aware. They take informed decisions. And they take really good, disciplined actions on it.
And that's good to hear that women are not just risk averse; they're risk aware. I think that's a great statement. And we'll come to this whole the way we take decisions and how can we take better decisions in just a bit. I think we'll put the stats up as well. Let's get the data up. This whole participation in the labor force. Some of this data would be from AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds of India. Some of it is government data. It'll all come up for you. What Preeti just referred to. That from the pre-COVID time, where the participation of women in the labor force was just about 23%, that number's moved up to 37%. And this is only as of 23. I mean, you look at 24 and onwards, these numbers are probably going to be increasing. And again, the share of, wealth in mutual funds as an aggregate, I looked at some data where you're talking about women as the total AUM of the industry. That number has now moved to about 15%. Versus the average for Indian households, which is about 8.5%. So these are some stats that will keep coming up for you, which are basically telling us that we're heading in the right direction. Neha, what about you? Because I think, when we're talking about estate, inheritance, wealth, planning, typically this is where things start getting complicated, right?
Actually, it is not that complicated. When you talk about inheritance, you talk about estate, it's a simple thing. For women, we take it to a different level. That's a different thing. But then what we need to do is we need to understand what is owned by the family. What is the money that is owned by the family? That is the part we leave it to, okay, men folk are going to take care of everything in the house. Whether it's your husband, your child, your father, whoever is the man in the house, he's taking care of the stuff. So it's best to first educate yourself, best to understand what is the money held by the family, what are the goals that the family is looking at, what are the objectives, how and where the money is invested. And if at all there is an exigency, then at least you know where to go, how to approach that.
But have you seen a positive change, say, over the last 10 years that you've been in practice, where women are willing to, put in that effort to ask questions? What are you seeing?
Yes. Not only women, I am so glad to say the male members are getting them along, that you need to understand. And this actually learning is not coming only by your platform or me talking about it or by newspapers, but by the surrounding neighborhood. When a person sees that somebody passed away and how the daughter or the wife didn't get her share or something wrong has happened to her. So then in that case, people are taking up on those learnings and people are saying that let me go ahead and tell this, let my wife know where my assets are, who is my fund manager, who is my asset manager. So tomorrow in case something happens to me, at least things are taken care of. Also, women, when they are sitting at the table with us, they are asking questions. At all times, they are asking questions about their money, their nomination, they are asking about how's the holding, where are you investing? So they are also curious.
Good. That's very good to hear.
Which is a wonderful
That's reassuring to hear. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to the next sort of piece that I want to get your thoughts on. Just having a greater say, a greater role in the family's financial decision-making and doing it, in a more nuanced way. I remember many years ago when I started covering personal finance, when everybody would talk about a very straight-jacketed approach to, okay, now you're single, you're planning up till about 30, you're getting married, then you plan with your husband, then you have child number 1, then child number 2. It was a very straight-line approach. But now I think we'll all agree that life many times doesn't go in a straight line. You may be single, may not be single, you may be divorced, you may have kids, you may not have kids. So how should the approach to financial planning and financial decision-making and ownership change? What is it that women and their families need to do differently? Sumaira.
So, the very first thing is that this conversation must start earlier and earlier. So, there is this big taboo around talking about finance at home.
Yeah.
You know, बच्चे सुन लेंगे, बच्चों को मत बताओ. But I feel that, you know, maybe in very adverse situations, if the children are very young, you may want to shield them. But I think, you know, kids who are a little bit older, maybe pre-teen, there is a way to introduce them into, you know, this whole concept, because it's very difficult for somebody to say, okay, now you have got a job and therefore today, from tomorrow, you must know how to manage your finances. It doesn't work like that. You know, kids are growing up with, you know, a certain moral code. Right? They know what is the family's moral code.
And a big material code. From the iPhones, from this to the holidays, and I want this and I want that. So they know the wants very early.
Which is why it is imperative that, you know, we as parents also introduce them to our money philosophy.
Yeah.
And that will go a long way. So, you know, also, I mean, I don't know if it's still happening in households, but earlier there used to be this thought that, you know, the male child should be told, the female child, usko to shaadi karni. That, I'm sure, is changing. To what extent, I cannot say. But that conversation has to start happening earlier and earlier. And I think if kids are growing up, knowing, you know, being aware of how finances are in the family, what the family thinks about it, you know, how they want to handle it, they will grow up to be more, not just financially aware of the situation, but they will be more confident in their life as adults. So if the you want that, you know, for adults to be better or more aware financially, it has to start earlier and earlier.
Got that. That's a fair point, great point. Preeti, let me ask you, and then I'll ask Neha as well. And now that we're talking about having a seat at the table, so, I mean, the awareness part is in our hands. We need to take interest. I mean, it starts there. Yeah. But then what? Now, these are tricky conversations. These are difficult conversations, especially if you're married and you have in-laws involved and joint ownership of assets. How does one navigate it?
So I think when we talk to our community members today, we have, you know, close to 11 lakh women who are on the platform, who are asking us these questions. And that is actually the top question. How do I frame this? You know, and again, we go back to what Sumaira just said. I think making this very right from the early times, saying this is a life skill that you need to learn. Just like you need to learn cooking, budgeting, all of that, this is a life skill. Financial planning is a life skill that you need to know. I think once you have that understanding of saying, okay, I need to now be on the table. And more importantly, I think to be on the table, because one of the things that I also want to add on to your earlier question was that for women, there is a paradigm shift in our lives, right? For example, there was a time when it was, you know, studying and having children and retiring.
Correct.
Today, if you look at women and their lives, there are like mini retirements that we face, right? Every time you have a child, every time you get married, sometimes just out of choice as well. And lifespans increasing.
You want to take a break,
Absolutely. So you need to actually plan for all of this, and which is why a woman needs to come to the table. Because typically, estate planning, wealth planning, or even if you go to middle income or low income households, financial planning or money goals were all around either the male members of the family or the children, because it was like, let's look at family security, right?
Exactly, it was one unit.
Correct.
So never thought independently.
So we did this Lakshmi Women and Money Power survey. And, you know, stats that are astounding. So the top 3 goals that women thought of when they had money saved was child's education. That's the first goal, right? Then there is the family's financial security, and then it could be travel.
Sure.
But nowhere does her own financial security feature. Her own retirement. We had less than 2% women who were even thinking that I need to think about my retirement. So I think getting all of these, putting this down, coming to the table, putting this down as financial goals, planning for these is very important. I think it is still difficult to, you know, in a lot of family settings for a woman to come to the table and ask questions. A lot is changing, like Neha said, especially in the more mass affluent families. But today, if you go down to, you know, tier 2, tier 3 cities, it is still a very difficult conversation to have. So I think really communicating, putting it out there that these are life goals, how do we plan for it together is very important. And I think the ability of women to now, like I keep saying, agency over the money they earn or the money they save. And one of the very unique features we found on Lakshmi is that women who've saved money, even if they are homemakers, actually have full agency over it. more
They have
agency
control.
than even, absolutely. They are like, this is my saved money.
Okay.
I decide what I do with it.
Sure.
Even more than working women, because somewhere with working women, time is they suffer from time
Short
poverty. So
supply,
what do we
yeah.
do?
Yeah.
So it's left to somebody else.
Yeah.
Whereas a homemaker is actually smarter today. She's on social media. She's looking at how, she's following a lot of people talking about finance. And she's like, I want to, very aspirational, right?
Yeah.
So I think that agency is there, the ability to frame it. And I will just tell you, I think when you come to the table, you should come to the Lakshmi platform. We'll definitely show you how to frame that question. Yes.
Fair enough, fair enough. No, we need to take a very quick break, but the how is what we need to focus on. How can we ensure our own personal security, even if it is within a family setup? That important question is going to be answered on the other side of a very quick break.
Let's talk money.
Welcome back. Here with this special edition of Let's Talk Money. 4 women in the studio. You guessed it. We are talking women and money and why we need to take greater control of our financial destiny. We've got some queries coming in from our viewers as well. And let's take one as an example of the wider questions that are existing out there. Sakshi has sent us this question. She says she's 28 years old and she has a dependent parent. Her mother is dependent on her. She's saying right now we're living in separate cities, but she needs to plan for her retirement by the time she turns 50. And she's already thinking of her investments, which is great, 20 to 25,000 rupees a month. Sakshi, congratulations to you. And Sumaira is going to, talk about how you can use mutual funds in a more holistic way in just a bit. But I want to take this question and draw it to a larger sort of canvas as well. And Neha, you come in over here. So this is exactly what we were discussing, right? Having our individual requirements as women. Now, today, Sakshi is 28. At some point in time, if she decides to get married, she'll have her own family. And then how do you legally ensure that your independent financial requirements, your independent need for financial security doesn't get compromised, even though you're staying in a family? Is it enough to depend on your father or your spouse or your brother for your financial security and needs?
So see, first thing that I always tell women specifically, that have your investments in your name. So at least you have that ownership with you, that this belongs to me. Example of Sakshi, if she wants to take care of her mother, probably she should have investments along with her mother. That in case something happens to Sakshi, then at least her mother gets the assets in her name. Mother is secured in that manner. Second thing, she's going to get married, she's going to have kids, she'll have a family and obligations around it. She is going to put in a large amount of her time, money and energy over there. She needs to create a corpus slowly and steadily, specifically for mother, because mother, I'm guessing she should be around 55, 60 if she is 28. She needs to realize there is an old age waiting for her mother. That calls for health issues. There should be an insurance in place for mother. So these are things she should start taking from today for her mother. She should start making her mother nominee in areas where she thinks that she can help her. There is a specific plan which I think Suresha will talk about, the SWP, which can help her mother also. Also, one of the things that I always tell people, that make a will. However young you are, you have assets in your name, make a will. Make provisions in your will that what do you want to do with your money. You have money, you want to take care of your mother, you nominate her, you put her name in the will, you ensure that the assets go to her. Inform your mother about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Very important.
Let me extrapolate this, and this is just from an illustration standpoint. Say in this case, eventually the girl has inheritance coming her way through her family, through the mother, etc. Then as women, now whether we are young women or middle-aged women or old women, what should we keep in mind? Because the moment there's inheritance coming in, there's bound to be a lot of very tough conversations. In whose name should those assets go? How do you ensure that if the parent intended the girl to be secure, how does she fend off a lot of the others who might have a lot of advice to give?
Money calls a lot of honeybees. So, see, one of the things, as I said earlier, you need to have the money in your name. If it's a large corpus, keep it in a private trust. That's the best way of securing and safeguarding. What we have seen over the years, in the past, women get money as inheritance from their father or from their husband. they end up transferring that money back to the family members or to the brother or to the son or to the daughter that you manage it for me. Why? Keep it in your name.
Yeah.
Let them manage it in your name. That's the best way to move forward.
Yeah.
Again, have a will, have a trust, have these safeguards in place. One of the things which we talked about earlier, which was educate yourself. Whether you're young, old, doesn't matter. Educate yourself. What is the money that you have? Where is it getting invested? How are you going about it? What is your end objective? Do you want to take care of yourself in case something happens to you? You're physically not able to do anything, then who's going to take care of you? Those kind of things should be taken care of. Those things should be thought through.
Yeah.
So those objectives and goals should be worked upon.
Sure. Okay, very quickly, 1 minute each for final thoughts. Since our viewer was talking about, using mutual funds and starting out that wealth journey, Sumaira, there was also, by the way, one more query saying, is there anything specific mutual funds can do for women or some specific products which can solve for women's needs?
There isn't a specific product, but now there is so much flexibility with mutual funds, right? So you can actually use them to, tailor make solutions for you, right? So there is, like Neha mentioned, the systematic withdrawal plan, right? SWP. It is one of the most powerful tools that you can use to sort of craft a solution for your particular need. You want to start a startup, you want to take a mid-career break, or, whatever your requirement may be. You just need regular income. An SWP, I don't have time to explain it fully, but an SWP can actually create income while at the same time your the capital that you have invested continues to grow. So it is possible to tailor make any sort of solution. You don't need a product per se. You just need to customize the solution to your need.
Okay, fantastic. So SWP, keep that in mind along with all the SIPs that you're doing. Finally, last 60 seconds on the show, you have the hardest part. You have to recap all of this for us, Preeti. Checklist for women, young, middle-aged, old, whichever way.
Okay. So the first checklist for any woman is to have a financial document checklist. Whether you are affluent, middle income, family wealth, you should have a financial document checklist. Where is the money invested? What is the insurance? All of that, right? So that tomorrow, if you're left on your own, you know exactly what to look through. Second most important thing is to start and take charge of two goals in your life, an emergency fund and a retirement fund. I actually call the retirement fund financial freedom fund these days because I think that's more what women are thinking about. And start investing even small amounts. The minute you start earning, start putting money in both of these. It will grow. Keep, do the step up SIP, all of that, right? And mutual funds are a great way to start your financial planning and get into it. Third, most important, again, take an insurance policy. People really discount insurance, but particularly a health insurance for yourself or your dependents, because that is the one thing that could eat into your savings and investments. And last but not the least is to learn to draw out your financial goals. Once you have jumped into the sea, you've invested 1,000 rupees, you will make sure as a woman that you follow up and see where it is going. And I think that's the first step. So keep yourself informed, do a little bit of learning. It doesn't take much time. Money management can only be as complicated as you make it. Fundamentally, it is very, very simple. Absolutely. So start, begin, don't delay this.
Wonderful, wonderful advice, ladies. Thank you very much. I know we can go on for a long time because it's a really deep issue, but I think it's a good start. And hopefully this is the first of many more conversations ahead. Thank you for coming in and giving us the basics of money management that all of us women need to keep in mind. All right, with this, it's a wrap on this edition of Let's Talk Money. Do remember, keep sending us your feedback, your comments and queries. See you again next week.
Let's Talk Money.